What is the meaning of estoppel and relevant sections under Indian Evidence Act 1872? Estoppel refers to a legal principle that prevents a person from alleging facts which are contrary to past claims or actions. Accordingly, estoppel precludes someone from arguing anything contrary to a claim made or act done previously by that person. Theoretically, estoppel means protecting people from any unjust action due to the inconsistencies of any other person's acts or words. Doctrine of estoppel is that provision which prohibits a person from giving false evidence by preventing them from making contradicting statements in a court of law. This doctrine holds a person accountable for false representations made by him, either through his words or through his conduct. Relevant sections of the Indian Evidence Act 1872 are Section 115 to 117. Conditions for application of doctrine of estoppel. The representation must be made by one person to another person. The representation made must be as to facts and not as to the law. The representation must be made as to an existing fact. The representation must be made in a manner which makes the other person believe that it is true. The person to whom the representation is being made must act upon that belief. The person to whom the representation would be made should suffer a loss by such representation. Classification and types of doctrine of estoppel. Estoppel by a matter of record or quasi-record. This type of estoppel arises from the judgments of the court. Estoppel by deed. This type of estoppel arises from the terms of a contract or deed. Estoppel by pays or estoppel by conduct. That this type of estoppel arises from the conduct, admissions, or representation of a party. Estoppel by election. This type of election arises when a person having two inconsistent rights chooses to exercise one, thereby excluding the other. Equitable estoppel. This type of estoppel prevents a person from taking advantage of his or her wrongdoing. Estoppel by negligence. This type of estoppel arises when a person's negligence causes another person to suffer loss or damage. Estoppel by benami. This type of estoppel arises in case of benami transactions. Proprietary estoppel. This type of estoppel arises when a person is prevented from denying the right of another person to property. Estoppel by convention. This type of estoppel arises when parties to a contract agree to accept a certain state of affairs. Estoppel by acquiescence. This type of estoppel arises when a person, by his silence or inaction, allows another person to believe in a certain state of affairs. Contractual estoppel. This type of estoppel arises when parties to a contract agree that certain facts are true. Exceptions to doctrine of estoppel. The doctrine of estoppel has certain exceptions where it does not apply. Knowledge of truth. This doctrine does not apply to those matters where both parties have the knowledge of truthfulness. Both parties plead estoppel. This doctrine which does not apply when both the parties involved plead estoppel. Questions of law. This doctrine does not apply to the questions of law. Sovereign act of the government. This doctrine does not apply to the sovereign act of the government. Against a minor. This doctrine does not apply against a minor who fraudulently misrepresents his or her age. Against statutes and regulation. Estoppel cannot be applied against statutes and regulations. It should not come in conflict with the statutes and regulation. Ultra vires order and decision. It does not apply to ultra vires orders and decisions.